Hello and welcome everyone to the Ethics and Equity in the Workplace program brought to you by the Laidley Centre for Business Ethics and Equity here at McGill. It's wonderful to see some returning faces as well as some new participants joining us for this second session. Just before we get started, let me acknowledge that McGill University is on land which has long served as a site of meeting and exchange amongst Indigenous peoples, including the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe nations. We acknowledge and thank the diverse Indigenous peoples whose presence marks this territory on which most of us now gather. Today's session is the second of 5 sessions, and we will be touching on questions of ethics as it relates to equity, diversity, and inclusion, or EDI. I will introduce the session speaker in just a moment, but one quick housekeeping item before I hand the floor over. Please note that these sessions are recorded so that those of us who are not able to attend in real time may still have access to the program's content. And to keep things organized, please raise your hand when responding to a question or jumping into the conversation, and only unmute yourself when called upon. This is just so that we can avoid people talking over each other, as can sometimes happen in a large Zoom call like this. If you're not comfortable asking a question out loud for whatever reason, please feel free to send me your question over the chat and I will be happy to ask it on your behalf. Now, without further ado, I am pleased to introduce this evening's speaker, H.J. Jung. H.J. is an associate professor of organizational behavior and the director of equity, diversity, and inclusion here at McGill Desautels. H.J., the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I like the virtual floor. Thank you very much for the great introductions. So a few months ago, the UA team and the Laidley Centre approached me that, can you meet our alumni great group and speak about equity and ethics, especially in the management and workplace? It's a very tricky question, very difficult questions, and also very important questions. So it actually created a bit of a headache to me, that because I don't have a 20-hour session, but it's actually like roughly 55 minutes or 60 minutes that I have to communicate something very important with our community. So I chose this topic quite carefully, and actually based on a couple of cases that we can actually walk through together and see how this is related to you and how we can actually develop our equity and diversity program in each organizations in a better form. Again, and I am H.J. Jung. I'm actually new to Montreal and new to McGill. So I'm sure that I haven't seen you actually in person yet in the campus, but I'm very happy to have that opportunity later on. And I joined as Associate Professor of Organizational Behavior. Also, I'm leading our EDI initiative at the Desautels. I'm also sitting as an executive committee for the business school. Because we haven't ever met, and I was not faculty before until actually this summer, that I just briefly introduced myself, that why I'm here actually with you. Back in, I don't even remember, it's 20 years ago almost, like, and I was a marketer, and I was doing advertisements in South Korea and Seoul, in my country. While I was working for the company, then I was thinking about, you know what, I really want to do some research. And so I moved to France and actually in Seattle. And so I did my PhD degree in Seattle. Right after that, I became a professor. I was staying in London for 10 years, and I was professor in Imperial College London Business School and teaching entrepreneurship and also EDI relevant, especially leadership. While I was there, that I did a lot of research about EDI, especially leadership and organizations. And maybe after this one, that we can actually send a couple of important documents I would like to share with the group. First, that can be done, and then generate a couple of research, and actually brought a lot of attention from the medias and social actors and also the corporates. It was more about when the diversity exercise or diversity strategy in an organization or corporate can be a little bit more like a music class or a gym class, that when something is not going well, they cut that budget the first, and then they fire non-white, for example, the leaders. And then that was actually featured in Time Magazine and Fortune and Forbes. So those are the center of my research. And then now I'm here at the Desautels, and then I'm meeting you. When I actually got invitation, I was thinking, I mean, from the moment I was actually already had an idea that what I wanted to actually speak about. So I did not want to make these occasions with our members, not only talking about, diversity or equity and inclusions as a societal goal, but we are from the business goal. So I want to focus about this as a corporate goal that compared to 20 years ago or 15 years ago already, that many of us and a lot of corporates, especially more public firms, start to aware, and then they actually see the evidence that the diversity, inclusions, and equity programs and achieving those goals becomes quite important within the organizations and corporate especially. And then they see various positive indicator that why it is so. This is actually the data from 2022, and then they analyzed and then published in 2023. So it's a quite new one that various domains, industries, and countries, especially in North America, that they see that there is a huge impact when the corporate achieve their diversity and the ED. I'm going to quote it from now on: EDI goal and EDI practices and EDI goal, and whether their members perceive that we are actually having a good EDI strategy and that we are very satisfied, then actually the performance, I'm talking about financial performance and the market value and the market shares actually increase. So there is a various evidence that why the EDI strategies or EDI achievements is becoming quite important elements of the each corporate. So that's something that I do not want to kind of insist, or let's talk about ethical views, or let's talk about this is a social problem, this is about being a good person. I just want to kind of close that one aside, but let's talk about our benefit of the EDI work for the corporates. So here was my agenda. That do I have to speak about why this is so important, or where are we now? So showing the statistic, that where are we now in Quebec, where are we now in Montreal, in Canada, or North America, or whole world? That I was not 100% sure that whether that's something we would like to spend our Wednesday evening, which is very important, but I wanted to make it a little bit more practical, maybe, to see that how we can actually avoid some mistakes that was well known, or kind of food of thoughts that maybe it can help us to tweak our strategy or fundamentally review our strategy, where we have to go back to see where we are. So the contents of today was, so ineffective EDI initiatives in organization that I could see for the last decades, and then what we researchers and academics, and not only us and the industry practitioners, we gather together and think about and try to solve. That's something that I wanted to introduce everyone here. Okay. Are we all good? Can I move on? This is going to be the today. So many EDI initiatives fail. I'm not going to lie that it fails, and it often badly fail. It sometimes fail or disappear without any noise, just gone. And they are very costly. When I said about costly, it really costs a lot. So let me just tell you how much it is. So in the recent data that I could actually find, how much is overall the global, the money is going to the EDI market. When it's an EDI market, it's about is HR, is a training, hiring, or maintaining, or leadership search, a lot of EDI scope, and it's 15.4 billion by 2026 expected, and currently roughly 10 billion. This is USD, right? This is extremely high. If you actually compare even innovation or patent work and everything, this simple cost is gigantic. And then often we don't know that it's a real impact, whether often people believe that this is failed. They will share the another article we do about the failure of the one organization recently featured in New York Times. not only about financial cost, but there is simple other indicator to say that this is failure is simply there is no significant improvement in your organization, in my organization, other organization. I don't see the impact. And even worse, it's too tired to hear about EDI. Let's not do it. And or it's a backlash, or this is simple denial that it doesn't exist. Our society is perfect, or my company is perfect. We don't have anything to fix. So it gets actually multi-layered cost occurs. And so people actually want to be really now careful that what we are going to do in terms of EDI strategy in each organization and in its industry and everywhere. And that's what I'm actually doing here too, right? So if I actually go back, as I said, I want to introduce a couple of cases, actually 2 cases that ineffective EDI, everybody believed that this would work, but fail. And where are we now in terms of fixing or revising that initiatives? And I want to focus on 2 cases. One is about entrepreneurship, the investments, the huge market of the venture capital. They're trying to find the best startup ventures that they are going to back and then expecting 100 times of returns. And then they're really careful. And then they see a lot of problem there. They're trying to actually find the best candidates, especially without seeing the gender barrier or racial barriers or other barriers. They are trying to do it and then see where we are. Now, the second one is very important, is a hiring. I don't know whether any of you in recent time that you had a chance to hire people or apply the job or seeing the job post or your company is planning to hire. Where are you now in terms of a hiring process? You're actually currently doing the hiring or plan to do it so, or you're applying? If you can reveal, not really. Oh, we have Steven. Should I say Stefan or Steven? So you're doing it. Are you hiring or are you on the market?
No, we've hired. So
You've
we've been
hired.
hiring. I was part of the process and
To the
yeah,
part of the process.
yeah.
So have you or have your team actually engaged from the time that you're actually organizing the job post?
So, sorry, could you repeat
So
that?
in your hiring process, have you ever actually engaged in the tailoring the job post, job advertisement?
Well, so we sort of, I mean, we've had training, right?
Training.
EDI training.
Yeah.
Everybody has to have that at McGill,
Mm-hmm.
I'm led to believe. And
Sure.
I gotta say, I can't remember a thing about it. And in terms of the advertising of the position,
Okay.
there seems to be a variety of McGill templates that you're kind of obliged to follow, sort
Mm-hmm.
of. So, yeah, and as a non-expert, then I say, yeah, okay, if you're saying this is whatever, gender neutral or whatever it is you're trying to get at, fine with me, because I don't know. I mean, I hear the stories that if you if you put in a job advert where there's 20 very specific goals or tasks, then that's not female friendly. Yeah, so you hear all these kind of theories.
Yes, they're just gonna actually, Steven, that's correct. Let me just actually, so
Yeah,
if I remember correctly, if we put the 20 different categories, the female believe that they have to tick the box for all 20
right.
boxes. Men
And
believe that, oh,
men don't. Yeah, I
I tick
got
the box
one.
one.
Yeah.
I'm
And
perfectly fitting it.
and that is true. I mean, so even with this new strategy, we were getting CVs, and I'm going, I don't know why they applied. I mean, this person is not fitting this job. Why
No,
did
you
they
are not.
apply? Yeah,
But yeah, because you have a 20 criteria, because I can fit in at least one. I'm perfect for that job. But in the whereas some female candidates were maybe fit in the 18 categories, but do not apply because
yeah.
of the
The
I'm not
two, and they say, I'm
two,
not going to
right?
do it. Right? Yeah.
Exactly. So there is a lot of, thank you very much for sharing your experience. Actually, that would be very relevant to the case I'm going to show, but we didn't actually pre-discuss this this case, just in case. So one thing I want to share is that because of a lot of belief that we do change our hiring strategy to make more diverse pools and everything, that we'll see where we are and what kind of mistake that we actually did it because of the certain belief. And that's one cases. In investor decisions or hiring decisions, before that, actually, I have to show this. This is something that I did today, this morning, that I went to Indeed and I was searching how many jobs actually we can find in Montreal today. I don't know whether anybody who is looking for senior project manager job, how difficult to recruit amazing talent these days. And this is in Montreal. When we actually do the 50 kilometers, you have to drive 40 minutes maybe, and then it's the last 14 days. This is just good job that's paying actually 6 digits above, that we have 75 jobs. If you replace with software developer, then today only that there's last 24 hours, we had a 20 job already in this regions, the Montreal itself. So the talent world, the finding the best person who can actually fit in within our budget, actually, and then work with my existing employees are extremely important, right? So the investment decisions or hiring decisions, our goal is finding the best person and we select, and then do not miss the person, the even better person, because of our blind or something. That's what we are doing. And then when we are looking for the best candidate or the best company, I'm going to put in my money, I'm going to put my money in. You're not going to select those person because that guy wear the green suit, right? That's very simple. That I think that it's even my 7-year-old daughter, that she would understand that we are not going to choose in that way. We want to see who is capable and then who are the best. So there is a lot of screening tests and evaluation and interviews, and that we would like to see. And then there's so much of money going on there, and our time, our sweat. And I'm sure Stephen was spending quite a lot of hours to initiate this hiring process, right? That's what we are trying to do. Now the issue is that the why then a lot of EDI strategy in this domain fail. One is that this is a very simple argument people can say. It's very hard to find qualified, you can name it, candidate. It can be Black candidate, it can be female candidate, it can be any equity deserving group that you can say that we want to hire, and then we want to hire the best candidate among the applicants, and then we want to do it, but we often fail even after putting so much of effort. And then normally 2 reasons are given from the top or leaders or any HR practices, anybody, or even naive scientists, easily given. And one is that, you know what, actually people do not apply. We really prepared everything, and we'll be really having all the system to be non-biased recruitment or interview or investment decisions, but simply we don't have people coming. The second, what we say that, okay, even in the case people come, they're not qualified, they're not that good. So we can't find, there's 2 problems. One is actually the number problem, so we don't have enough candidates. And the second is that they're not qualified. So these 2 are known as the top 2 points that why the EDI, even after putting so much efforts, that we often fail. And let's see that whether, we're not going to discuss whether this is true or not true, but the companies working on hard to remove number 1 and number 2, and then why it still make a failure. So let's move on to number 1. People do not apply a lot, even after so much of efforts writing, create advertisement, and then make rumor that we are hiring, and etc. and etc. Why not many females are applying for the leadership role? Why not many amazing Black candidates are not coming to us? And there is why there is applicants problem. So decades ago in Harvard University, is actually law school and business school, they figured out, you know what, actually the job advertisement is a big problem, right? the people actually see the very subtle biases and an unconscious bias from the advertisement. And then the job sounds really like just for men. So, when they say about it should be determined person, it should be decisive. We would like to somebody who's very passionate, strong. And then the language they are using is not actually very good for female candidates. And so in a lot of places, you can't say, we are hiring women, we are hiring men. You're not going to identify the gender of the candidate you desire. But because of a lot of languages we are using in advertisements, maybe some candidates, although they are amazing and well-fitting, they're not coming to us. So this is really long, it's kind of long-lasting, the firm belief that we had from the 2012, the work. And what recently people did is that, we'll do this one again. It actually happened 2 years ago. And then we are going to use gender language. We are not going to use gender language. So before, the gender language was to attract the women, it was helpful. Interpersonal, this job is somebody who is very sensitive. And for the male candidates, it's kind of male, the masculine focused language is assertive, outspoken, analytical. And also people believe that the employer or the person who are actually the front line to do the screening is a female name, then female is actually more intending to apply for the job. And so they actually make it more female going to be on the job posting. So it's going to be more female friendly among the applicants. And what they did is that, this is actually done in MIT and the Michigan State, they analyzed 500,000 job seekers and also 300,000 US job posting and analyze about their languages and then actually application. They also did the field experiment with a real company, whether their job advertisements bring more female candidates, for example. And that's what they did. And then the outcome is there was no impact. They did multiple studies in different industry and different timing, and then didn't see any impact. Actually, the impact was just increase of female candidates by 0.5%, which was really minimal per company. So it was kind of proven as it's not working as we wished after putting so much effort. And hiring new person on the front in HR didn't work. Anyone who can guess the why it didn't work? It's also speculation that we are discussing the why this is the case. There will be a follow-up study that to improve, but anyone who can guess? I can't answer actually. So it didn't work. And then one of the things is that in 2024 now, compared to decades, even compared to 2 decades ago, people are really well connected, not as a best friend, but actually from the Glassdoor, Facebook, or LinkedIn, people can already reach out to people who are working already in the company and who are in that occupation. So when we actually mask the job with the gender and any HRs and everything, and actually they know whether that occupation is actually very masculine, or this is not a company that as a woman or as people of color, it's not, that the culture is not yet there. So what people do is that when they see the job ads, they go and check, and then when there is a discrepancy happen, and it's even more, they do not apply. So again, that this is kind of giving us some implication that it's kind of showing the signal. And actually what it is, now the candidate has really better understanding about the job and then the cultures and occupation itself. And so it's really difficult to actually show from the advertisement. So advertisement is just telling, we have a job. But beyond that, the role of a lot of manipulations we are doing or a lot of efforts we put in was not working as before. So what the specialists and experts are recommending here, which is becoming even more difficult now, is that the strategy about this recruitment especially in relation to the EDI, should align to the cultural and structural changes. The occupation is still very masculine, or the culture is still quite masculine, that it's really difficult to actually attract women, even no matter what advertisements you're making, because of they have all the access to information from the network that they can now easily have. And what's very important, still you have to move on. While the cultural changes are happening and structural changes are happening, there is a buffering time, right? But that's why your current employees and their message to the outside is extremely important. They can't lie that we are perfect. We are really, diverse group. We are actually really inclusive. They can't really lie about it, but they can actually send a message about the efforts what company is currently doing. And this is really efficient, and it's very effective to bring a lot of diverse, talented candidates to the organization as applicants. The last one, again, another buffering thing is while you're building those culture and making your company change, is that the referral network is extremely important. That these particular candidates who are not yet as a majority in the organizations, they have the trust is extremely important. So they rely on their referrals much more than the others. And then sending the message through the network and then what companies are currently doing as a change behavior, and then that would really affect them to apply for the job. So again, the time that it builds up, that there is a lot of strategy has to go on together. Otherwise, you will see some vacuum. Steven.
Yeah, I just want to touch a bit quickly on the previous slide about the reasons why people aren't fooled.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying, right?
That's what they kind of feel.
Yeah. So I have this new theory, maybe it's an old theory, about EDI being a two-way street. If you're trying to do something, then I think the people should appreciate that and say, well, we kind of don't believe you, but at least you're trying. You change the language. At least you're trying to do something. So I'll apply because you're trying. Because if both sides don't try, then I don't think anything's going to happen, right?
You're
and
right.
I think that's what's happening now. One side is saying, I'm kind of doing my best, and the other side is saying, well, it's not good enough. Sorry.
Totally. So Stephen, there is actually my own study. I'm very happy to share about how we can actually promote those messages to the applicants. But here, my second point and third points are extremely important because of the manners, right? To make them to believe that, I try to make them to try. It's actually quite costly because they have to apply for a certain job and then time is limited, right? And so the effort is limited. And so when they actually think about which job, and then to see that this, they're trying, so actually my try is going to work, right? They have to have those beliefs. And so the existing employees' engagements and the sending out the message and then building the referral network, and then they send the message, extremely important. That's what the experts are actually recommending as kind of when you're in between and in the process, rather than give up. That's kind of strategy you have to build to bring them in and make them to believe that they would like to try, and then a trial is actually somehow working. They're not expecting that it's going to be definitely working, but to make them to try, there should be a certain signals we have to send out. So that's kind of the two things I wanted to point it out. Given the timing, let me just move on to the second case. So in the second one, hard to find this time the qualified one. And let's little bit put aside whether the pool of qualified candidates are equally distributed based on different populations. And that's not what I'm talking about. It's more about whether we actually see the qualification or quality or the standards in a right way. So a lot of organizations, not only university and corporate firms, even musical organization, it's orchestra, even restaurant, they all have to see that how we can actually measure the people's quality really well, and then see whether we can actually bring the best comes in. The whole point is it's not about the social norm that you have to you have to hire a certain person, but it's more about finding the best talent, right? So let's actually focus on that one and see that how people are measuring the quality, especially in focusing on the venture capital market. So in the venture capital market, this is a really well-known thing that 85% to 90%, depending on the country in North America and also Europe, that the venture-backed firms are 85 to 90% of venture-backed firms are male-led company, and then the rest is non-male. That's the kind of simple statistic. And one of the things people believe that, again, here is also there is a problem that the female entrepreneurs are not coming, or the racial minority entrepreneurs are not coming and ask money. So that's on another side. So there's another study. But it's also when they come, and then when they compare the quality check or the standards about them, and then or that their actual belief about growth is quite varying, and so there is just a huge gap, and then that's actually driven the investors. So what people in industry, people in the industry and academia, what they suggest is that why don't we actually kind of make the simple criteria that everybody follows, rather than just believing your subjectivity. So why don't we actually come up with this criteria, and then based on each criteria, and they evaluate them and see that whether we actually see every candidate fairly or non-biasedly. And so what they did is that, and then shockingly, this is actually from the Swedish data in Europe that is kind of be seen as the most non-biased the country about the different per each population, but we'll see. So this is a category they made. And then one of the things is that we'll see the personality, how much of knowledge in the second row, how much knowledge each candidate, the entrepreneurs have, and also there being innovations and risk aversions, and then the capability, and then they kind of made a category of 5 categories. Actually, there is a 25, but I just only showing the 5. They have 5 categories and compare the average male entrepreneurs versus the female entrepreneurs. And then people say, you know what, actually, if you just look at this table, then how they are evaluated per each categories, and then you see that it sounds like, and it looks like, and it's kind of fair to say that even my money that will go to the male entrepreneurs because they are more entrepreneurial. And so they use that as kind of the foundation that why the current situation is like that. I'm not against it completely, because even in the case, if the report is given in that way, then I have to decide, and then I have to actually expecting my investment is going to have 100 times returns, and I would actually go to more blue side here. Now, decades after, really literally 1 decade after, then a lot of people were using this criteria, and then they didn't see much of difference from 10 years ago and now, especially even more than the board of directors or CEO, the venture capitals and entrepreneurial markets are still quite disparated. And so they don't understand why the female never really become an entrepreneur based on this criteria. And then this amazing venture capital firms, and the scholars in Boston, and then they actually collaborate, and then they start to look into the one different data, and then go to see that what was actually problem. And they figure out most of venture capitalists and well-established venture capitalists and angel investors using assessing this each criteria, they've been using different questions. So let me just give you one most contrasting questions. For the male entrepreneurs, during their pitch and their meeting to see that whether they put their money in or not, then can I see your market plan clearly highlighting the marketing strategy? They want to see the marketing strategy. The other one, how are you going to manage the delayed payment? So the question was given a little bit differently to assess the same criteria. The one is kind of how are you going to make your market bigger? What is your marketing strategy to make your more people to be exposed to your product? The other one is more about how are you going to handle when there is a problem in your company? And then so they actually go into even more data to look into what's happening. And then see that these are the lot of questions that they're actually showing differently to assess the same criteria, the men versus women entrepreneurs. So one thing that I want to highlight is growth. And the two male entrepreneurs, for the same investors, they're asking what major milestone are you targeting for this year? So it's kind of how much are you going to grow, right? And then for female entrepreneurs, how predictable are your future cash flow? And is it defensible, your business, whether other companies are not coming in and whether you can defend it? And for the male entrepreneur, they're asking, do you think that your target market is growing one? So if you see the questions, that one is actually kind of asking already like, your growth strategy. The other one is not to fail your strategy. So it's not only about decide to invest versus not decide to invest, because the question is given in the way, the answers are actually, I have to go back to be enthusiastic but weak, experienced but worried, because you're asking about the case that whether computers are coming in the market, right? Right. So this contrast was actually not coming from the actual talent and expertise, but it's about the question was given in a different way to measure the same skills, let's say, right? And so what happened is the how to manage. So the venture capital is called Village Capital in US. Actually, they have a market in Africa and Asia and Europe too. And the venture capitalists, what they did is that from now on, when they evaluate, they actually standardize even the questions. And then they have to ask risk versus growing, and both for male and female, the entrepreneurs, and then evaluate and see how we change our behavior. Of course, their employees that they're actually venture capitalists was not aware of it, but the leadership knew, and then they changed their way of assessing the potentials. And then this is the simple, if I have to explain, the control is when they were not using standardized questions to make it equal for men versus women, and there's still a lot of male founders get funded. But when they actually change their way of assessing, and hence now the same questions are given to both male and female of entrepreneurs in the same way, then the gap becomes almost nothing. It's insignificant. The one thing what we have to make sure is that it's not only about we would like to help female entrepreneurs, it's not about it's more of company, because you wanted to at least choose the best, really qualified people. But because you're asking only about growing question to certain group, and then you don't see their weakness, now you're actually balancing out what kind of criteria you are measuring with the same questions, imbalanced questions. You can also see really the real talent and real capability of the candidate that you normally would not give money into. So that's what they were doing. Then again, that I wanted to make two cases here. That one is that because actually I have one more slide and I will actually wrap up. So in here that the people are asking different way of doing it. Number one is that identifying the root cause is extremely important. Otherwise, we do a lot of different strategies here. But then actually that was really not the real reason that why we fail to recruit, why we don't actually get the best talent for the organizations. And often we rely on one case or two cases, or I heard something happen, some other companies and et cetera, rather than our data. The data is extremely important to identify the root cause, where actually the friction is started coming from, where is the gap actually starts from, and to make the strategy around it is extremely important. So without having those evidence, just putting lots of money is extremely dangerous because it's not just again about financially costly, but it's actually make other organization members really tired, and then they start not to believe about the strategies. So it's extremely important. Now, when you launch the EDI strategy for your companies or organizations, and often you will see not much result. That doesn't mean that it failed or something. That actually can tell you that the evidence you rely on or you anchored was not the data maybe you have to look into. This is perfect opportunity for you to actually visit other data or other design. You have to actually check to see whether you can have, so before concluding this is not working for your organizations. So often I'm asking, when the data is there, when actually, of course, we have to rely on our human decisions, and this is our primary data we would like to look into, and then hence we can actually do this action. But if it doesn't work, go another data that is actually more deeper, and actually this is a kind of, looks like a boundary or like a periphery, but actually that will make address the real cause, and then move on another one before changing strategy. That's actually a very important way of doing EDI strategies. I think I have 15 minutes left, so let me close it here. Before closing that, I wanted to make sure again that I do not want to discuss the importance of EDI strategy in its organizations. We're not doing it because it's good for social, which is actually very important, but also especially if you're working for profit organizations, not non-profit, it's corporates, and we are actually normally mostly working for the corporates and public company and private company, looking for the financial returns. I think it's really important to believe that, and then actually what data shows is that when EDI strategy are well executive and well identified and well done, a lot of company has huge benefit, normally by having great talent that you normally do not have. When you think about finding the diamonds, for example, that when you're searching your diamonds in a very small sand versus you have like 100 acres and then you start to search, it's costly. But if you find the mechanism how to identify, and then the bigger pool actually normally provide a better talent. So from that angle, if you start to see it, you will see that how you can actually make an efficient strategy for your company. And as alumni of our Desautels and McGill, that you have so many faculty members, there are a lot of experts here to help you and then speak to you, and I'm very happy to do so. So this is my quick 2 case introductions, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer for the next 50 minutes. Thank you. And this is my email address. You can reach out to me in case. Yeah. I'm going to unshare the screen. Yes.
Yeah. Does anybody else have a question? Because I don't want to keep asking questions. Anyway, I'm an engineer, or rather I'm in engineering. I'm not an engineer, I'm a prof, right? That's different. But, you have this engineering approach to things, which is very boring. But I think I'm oversimplifying case 2, because it sounds to me like, well, why didn't you just ask the same questions for every candidate? Why did you say, oh, woman, let's switch to these questions? And when we do the hiring, we ask exactly the same questions from exactly the same people on the committee, because that is the scientific method, right? Because if you start varying things, you don't know where you are. So I'm thinking, well, are these guys who run venture capitalist firms that stupid? I mean, really? So honestly, that's my kind of astonishing what the hell's going on question here.
There are a lot of those So actually, this is really shocking, right? When this study and this practices was introduced, actually in many different places, even it was addressed in UN last year, and it was in HBR, and it was in many news, and it was actually I know the people who actually did the study really well, and had a 75 minutes conversation on Zoom about this because I do the very similar work. Because when you actually put the standard as, we are going to look personality, we are going to see how much of knowledge they have and everything. And because they believe that this is enough. And once you actually have a clear criteria, people's human bias kick in a much easier way because they have a strong belief that actually we have a system. Then you have your subjectivities kick in. And they do not know, I'm changing my question because this is because of the woman candidate. I'm just asking the question because when I see the candidate, that's the first thing I am actually having in my mind. And shockingly, that question, the difference in these two question type, it's not only happening for the male investor, but it's also happening for the female investors. Okay, so it's not only about that. Now, what was really shocking to many people was because their intervention, I mean, something about strategy was extremely simple. They didn't change everything. They just make them to ask the same question because the data said they didn't ask the same question so far. It was actually sounds like similar, but completely different, right? And so they just make them to ask both questions to the same candidate and then to measure their growing strategy versus or their risk management, both sides, right? And then see now, okay, these candidates well prepared with both sides, some are not and biased, and they actually have a better quality of their portfolio. So I totally agree, Stephen, that because it looks like very simple thing, but we humans, and actually we humans and more experienced humans actually believe about themselves so hardly and then start to ignore a lot of procedures and they create their own subjectivity because they have believed that I know what's going on, right? So that's why the system is extremely important. One thing that I wanted to introduce, one of my study is telling that I collaborate with the 5 global consulting groups that I can't really name because of my contract with them. And then they wanted to hire the best talent. That's their aim. So their HR do not know. But what we did is that we are trying to make the candidates exercise certain thing before they apply to see whether they actually believe that this company is perfect company to apply. Right. And they did. The problem is when they applied, the next line of the recruitment, when their subjectivity kicks in, and it's all gone. The efforts are all gone. So these are very fragile standard because once you have a lot of room that we actually start to believe about my own judgment, then the EDI practices we've been preparing easily fail. I'm not saying that everything has to be very fine-grained and finely defined strategy. That's not what I aim. But again, that we have to measure that every single step when we are measuring is equally applied, at least. That's actually important. Hi, Mark.
Hi, HJ. Thanks very much for the presentation. I had a question with regards to the costs associated with implementing EDI and where the majority of those costs are coming from. Is it through, for example, the sensitivity training courses and the time that gets eaten up by employees taking part in those, or is it maybe reworking the administrative side of things for the company?
What do you guess?
I'm going to say it's more the time lost for the trainings and sensitivity trainings, onboardings, etc. And
this big number is actually not shockingly not coming from the indirect cost that you just mentioned. So it's not about time lost. It's actually hiring. each company start to hire so many DI experts and the strategists and HRs that they become quite big, and then they start to do it. And also they use a lot of consulting groups to help them, and also analytical skills and everything. And the biggest cost is coming from because they can't pinpoint where they have to put their money in. So imagine the innovation that you have already a lot of data in your company and etc. You know where they actually start to go for, and then that money is going to that direction. The most company, they know something is working, something is not working, and try it out. So a lot of money is dispersed in various places. So a lot is something for just try out and hiring the EDI workers. And the third one is perhaps, I guess this is going to be the education of everyone, but actually launching the workshop and things are not that costly compared to the other one, but largely I think it's a labor courses.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, that's my understanding. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I had a follow-up question. Which is, how do you measure EDI? Because you said you spend a lot of money, nothing's happening. So, okay, let's say numbers of females hired, that's a metric. But isn't there there must be other things, right? Are there?
Yes or no? That's actually the big question we have to actually even organize just one conference, just because how to measure EDI success or failure. A lot of public companies, their success with EDI these days, initially actually until very recent time, was those simple metrics. How many female directors, especially board of directors, are extremely important, and how many women and people of colors in our C-suite. How many people were in our managerials, and how many people were newly hired in this year kind of thing. So it was a lot of number game in that way. That's one measure. That was already extremely difficult to achieve. That I'm doing a lot of study about board of directors and female recruitment is it took 30 years to make at least 70% of the public company in the States at least have one female director, even after so many things. In Norway, that they launched the quotas that every single public firm has to have at least 40% of female director. That was decades ago. Still, it's not yet done, even it was mandate. So the numbers are extremely important. I'm not saying that this is bad, and this is very important. So a lot of companies are working on that side. Now, the cultural side, and then how the current employees feeling about working safely and working inclusive ways and everything is a different measures. That's, some would say still is metrics because you can see from the retention rate or from the survey. But I think that one of the biggest thing is actually the retention rate. People are living is not happy. And who is living is also very important, right? As the females are living, the people of colors are living, who is living is also very important. So still it's quite a metric game that this is a number game, but not in a way that we would like to see 3 women in the board of directors, but it's more about more granular that who is staying, who's going, what is the gender pay gap, where is the racial pay gap, or how many people are newly applied for these positions, whether the trend is going well and the quality remains the same. There's a lot of metrics. But now a lot of EDI workers and our HRs and then leadership saying that this is not everything because we have to look into culture. And then let's see. And what are the message we are sending out to the society or the job market or the industry, and our actual leadership is well aligned. It looks like really genuine, or this is kind of decoupling or two-way track. So that's another measures. But still among the industry experts, there's so many debates of what we have to look into the first. And we have to only look into the culture, then what about the numbers? So it has to go together again. That is one of my wrap up today is you need both. And it's really difficult to measure. So that's why it's not really clear KPI for now.
Yeah. So just another quick one. Yeah, everybody says that EDI is great because you make money. That seems to be a core argument in saying, can you do something about EDI? But doesn't anybody care about social justice? I mean, suppose it didn't make any difference to the bottom line. Do you think companies would say, yeah, we're not going to do it? Waste the money, don't have to do it, not going to do anything. So that's this thing, your personal values versus the corporate values, which is what the whole thing's about.
I'm sure that there are those companies. They're not just doing it because initially, I mean, this is really many times I can show all the data is that initially that when the company, I'm just talking about public company, you can see everything in public records. They start to hire female directors when they see that they are actually having much less female than their industry competitors, then they start to hire. And they reach the same number, they stopped. So it was kind of norm-driven hiring, for example. Now, there is various reasons that patterns continue. Before, even some firms do not follow those norms because they didn't believe that the sales actually doesn't care and etc. But now, because activists, consumers, and some company believe that this is actually good for corporates, and then they start to do it, and then they don't know what is the good number. There's no clear calculations. There's no optimization they haven't found. And so they just look at others and then see that they do something similar. It's like innovation. It's very similar. So they are following that one. In those patterns, I'm not saying that there is the people and there's company and etc. They really do it, but I want to go back to the questions. And when I actually talk about EDI and EDI strategy to any corporates and any colleagues and etc., we are not talking about hiring just because they are women or they are Black or they are indigenous people. We're doing it, the good, talented women. We are not going to ignore that population, that candidate because they're women, that we would like to actually make all the posts coming to us and then make the best choice for us. That's a more corporate view. The why they are doing is ADI work. There is corporate leaders who I believe that they actually do because they believe about social justice and everything. But even to them, it's all my personal view that whether this is really has to be done because of social justice or social norms and everything, but I actually have a belief and there is evidence this is really good for the company and any organization, then why you don't do it? Why actually the other side, but the social side has to be too big for company rather than they believe as a profit company that this is really good for the company. It's already will make them to believe that way is very difficult because in their mind, the social is too big. And so the corporate goals are often ignored. But that's something I can tell you now.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
All right, that brings us to our end time for today. So thank you so much, HJ, for this insightful presentation. And for those of you who engaged in the conversation, our next session will be held on Wednesday, December the 4th, so 3 weeks from today. Just a reminder that you will receive a link to the next Zoom call along with the recording from this week. And yeah, keep attending these sessions because at the end of the 5 sessions, once you've completed a short quiz that sort of showcases that you've been taking everything in and you've marinated in the course content, if you will receive an attestation of having completed these hours. Yeah, thank you all for coming, and I look forward to seeing you in 3 weeks. Take care.
Thank you so much, everyone. Bye.